So just give it a couple of minutes, a few more minutes, and see how the people want to trickle in. Keeping these time boundaries not too tight. I'm a great believer in liberating the time boundary with a recognition they are useful, indeed useful to have some targets for us to gather together on. In fact, all of us use these things to steer our lives, but let's be human and not clocks. Living in community, often, get that sense. Generally, I tend to be on the early side of things. So that means generally you're waiting for a bit and you get irritated, or you can just stop getting irritated and wait. Getting irritated doesn't make any difference to everybody else, but it makes a difference to yourself. So you think, just breathing in, breathing out, standing, sitting. People operate in the way they do. And of course, we live lives in which there is a good amount of input happening. Okay. So good morning, everyone. Hope the time has been passing usefully, and you're learning a few things, seeing a few things, enjoying a few things, making peace with a few things. I'm trying to integrate, of course, the big ongoing, topic is how do we integrate some of the meditation experiences, some of the in-depth experiences into our daily lives. How do we open to the sense fields, of which the most provocative is the mind field. The mind field is a minefield of very explosive stuff, urgent stuff, busy stuff, can't do stuff. Everybody wants me to. I have to. I can't. I never. I always. They always. I always. It needs. All these ways in which this kind of sense of pressure is given a subject. It needs, or they need, or they want, or they expect, or everybody asks, or I'm always. Who is this person who's bothering me? Who are they? And so perhaps with some meditation, we might begin to get an insight into that agency. To say it's mine isn't quite correct, but it's intimate. Upadana, contracted state, and feel pressure, heart contracts, should lose it, it changes into a harder, more driven shape, either flattened or scattered or hardened. Do you know what I mean? And it's scattered into 5 different could, should do's, and going in different directions. Plate juggling. Do you ever do plate juggling in your life? 5 things on hold, 2 things about to, 1 thing pressing, something screaming, something bleeping. How do you manage all that? Scattered shape of the citta, or the hardened, got to get this done, driven shape, or the flattened, can't manage it shape. And these are all the ways in which citta can get affected, and that's certainly a big intimate concern. What triggers that work responsibilities, family obligations, things breaking down that need to be fixed, clocks telling you you're late. Calendars, what triggers all that? These signs. Okay, do you get what I mean by signs? They're translated into particular. So we hear a voice, we get some words, we get an exclamation mark, we see a clock, we hear a buzzer bell. That's just a thing, isn't it? In the outside world, and yet internally it turns into a sign, a defining mark, like which may be obligation, pressure, this sense of something pressing. You can feel it pressing, pushing. And then becoming is not that easy a word. What does that mean? It means we're shaped in terms of what that pressure has created. Become a driven person, or a burdened person, or a scattered person, or a redundant person. And becoming is when that shape becomes an identity. And then that identity, the citta settles into that identity. So even when the immediate pressure is gone, that identity remains. So even when the buzzer is switched off or the thing has been done, there's a certain retaining of that impression of. So we easily become more sensitive to anything that can remind us of that. So even meditation could be another got to. And another, oh, it's this time of day I've got to, and get to this experience that I'm supposed to have, I'm trying to have, got to. The same sort of shape occurs, right? Citta is, because that becomes a fixed identity, and this is very much a topic for people in what we call the working world. I mean, I work. You mean put forth effort. What does work mean? What's the difference between work and play? What's between work and doing physical exercise? Is that work? What's the difference between work and playing with your children? Does that definitely requires effort and intelligence and care? What's the difference? Probably less obligation, less expectation of finished result, end product, less crucial time boundaries. You can see how these qualities, obligation, expectation, time boundaries, and create a frame with which the citta gets compressed. And of course, in the salaried work, we call it that, in producing commodities or being paid for our services, then those boundaries are held with some clear intensity, because the economy is at stake. And we know that tends to trump every other concern in our work-driven society. Capitalist, whereby there's a lot of to get ahead of the game, competitive companies competing against each other, trying to win the market. and we involve getting back to operation as human beings. So much so, somebody asks who you know, hey, what do you do? So I'm a plumber, I'm a driver, I'm a waiter, waitress, or something, receptionist, I'm a secretary. I'm a human being. I practice the loving kindness. That's what. Often when I go to these borders, and they go to the travel and you go to these customs, and you have to say, meet the customs officer. What are you doing? And I say, well, I try to generate some people in the world. That's my job. You're trying to be funny. So that's what I do. Okay. Stamp, in you go. It's a good human occupation, isn't it? I'm a speaker. How much do they pay you for that? Nothing. And so this is the economy. No obligation, no expectation, just offering, sharing. And it's very wonderful to live like that. But for many people, of course, that's not the case. So how do you deal with that? Right, livelihood's a big topic, isn't it? And certainly, it was as a Buddhist monk, you could say I'm pretty busy in my particular area. Obviously I teach, I'm also write, I also support the community however I can. And this is since I resigned. Since I gave up being abbot, I think, what makes me so busy? Well, I do. And I check in with that because it's good, because nobody really, I don't have to do it very much at all, technically. What drives me to do that? Well, I feel a sense of service is important, purpose is important, responsibility is important, sharing is important. That's important for me. If I can, if they don't, nobody, if I respond to invitations, I don't go out on the street preaching, but if people ask me, I think I've got some energy for that. I'm just keeping in track with that, because still one can get that feeling of obligation, expectation. You've got to come up with something fantastic, make everybody happy and get it all working and be the expert in this, that, and the other thing. No, I'm just coming to say how it seems to me with a heart of goodwill. And, you can switch off if you like. So, but you see, that sense of really looking very closely, not just at the job, but or your responsibilities, but really, like, very important. It sounds selfish, but what's in it for you? Because if you do, you probably find there is something in it for you. Like most of us want to do something. And it's not just restlessness, it's a feeling of we have a special occasion. We've been gifted this body, this mind. The Buddha was pretty busy, some respect. Look at all the stuff they've recorded of his teachings. He wasn't hanging around, he was fairly active, engaged. And what do you want to do? It's a sense of you want to, in doing something, because you've been gifted this, and there's some potentials here. And can that doing be like something you're doing it to support your livelihood, your family, your shelter, your And also perhaps you're doing something you think, this is a nice thing to be able to bring into the world for other people. So for my welfare, for others' welfare, this is the way one should reflect. And be careful to really understand where the obligation and the pressure comes from. It's internal. It's internal. And it's associated with a certain sense of insecurity. Lack of stability, lack of openness. I'm not blaming anybody for that. Because the personality is not a stable structure. It is always tittering and responding to this, that, and the other. So, but then the security, so we might try to find a secure job. Well, that may not really be available. They would say they're secure until they fire you or they close the place down that you're working for. Of course, they say they're secure, but they're not. The economy's not secure. The currency values go up and down. Places are closing down all the time. People are going bankrupt all the time. People in Britain homeless on the streets, food banks. It wasn't because they were lazy or stupid. Just, things didn't, So there's no real security in that. Stability comes from standing back from that, knowing what your presence is about. Your presence is valuable. Anything else from that is your offering. Your presence is valuable. Why is it valuable? Because presence itself has a remarkable stability that has effects on other people. Your stability calms and generates space. So less agitation and anxiety and fear and I've got to make it as good as you can for you, less of that's going on, the more we can enjoy that sense of openness with each other. That's valuable. Your presence is valuable. What you do is as long as you stay connected to that presence, it's playful, it's interesting, it's fun, it's inquiring. As long as you stay connected to that stable presence, there's an openness to see how it goes. We'll do as best or as much in accordance with where the energy goes and where we can work things out. And ideally, it's great in that context when there's two or three of you holding the same sense of stability and wishing the others to be stable. Presence, not commanding them, but not creating those kind of obligations and pressures. So we can get a sense of, then the shared spaciousness is incredibly creative and potent. And I think this really is the way to go in our world. We can do things. We are human beings. We have capacity to do things. We have capacity to look after each other. We have capacity to get our physical needs met. But the most important thing is there can be this cooperation and based upon open stability. Now, often what I find in my experience is that good intentioned people, very good intentioned people with gifts, set up very high standards of what can occur. It's a reflex, probably to do with conditioning in the workaday world. So, you know, in working together can be that experience of, you know, really trying to get a really, really good job done. And I'm thinking, yeah, if that's what happens, that's great. Whatever that means. And they'll be looking much more at the external results, you know, things are happening on time, things are organized well, all sorts of stuff is being created, and you know, I've been meeting, you know, and that I'm thinking, actually, yeah, that's good. If it comes through this open stability, yeah, that's excellent. That's wonderful. But if we're actually starting to create a pressurized situation where people are working incredible hours to produce magnificent results, and we've lost some of that light playfulness, that openness, that don't know, could go this way, could go, if we lost that, haven't we overshot the mark, overshot the target? And where do these obligations come from? Oh, you know, so we're doing something in the monastery and, oh, well, lay people expect this, there's a car park and everything's fine, the cars don't get money. Do they? Do they? Maybe some do, but do they? And is that even a reasonable expectation? This is a forest monastery. If you know you come here, you're liable to get muddy because it's a muddy place. And yeah, and it's not like driving into a multi-story car park. You often got to kind of find a place to park under a tree, and that's the way it is. And do people expect it to be something? I don't know. And if they do, maybe they need to take a check on what they're going to. But you can get that feeling, oh, people will be unhappy because, you know, the ground is muddy, or, you know, they get their cars or get stuck in the mud. Yeah, but I'm not going to concrete over the entire monastery so that their cars don't get muddy. I mean, I don't think that's what they want. Maybe we just have to work with it. And yeah, you go. And who is the they that expects it? Well, the they is in my heart, is my fear of their hostility, my fear of letting them down, my fear of their unhappiness that I've been a source of, and my blaming myself and my sense of guilt and shame and inadequacy. That's what it is. It's not them. It's this. Haven't lived up to what I should be as a good mother. That's another one, isn't it? I haven't lived up to what I should be as a good son, as a good partner, as a good man. I haven't lived up to what I should be. Who set the benchmark? Where did that happen? And so we can get so concerned at this inner guilt and shame, and that we convert it into they want, or I'm not enough. I'm not as good as I should be. And that's pretty common, isn't it? Who says, who put the mark there? Yeah, maybe somebody else was able to do that. Good for her, good for him. But they probably fell short on a few other topics. Yeah, they were a fantastic, whatever it was, athlete or business person, but they were terrible to live with, frantic, obsessive, uptight. Oh yeah, she was wonderful looking after people, but she's a complete wreck. Compassion fatigue, burn herself out. So if you've got a blanket that's 1 meter long and you've got a 6-foot body, you're either to get the feet are going to be cold or the head's going to be cold. So sometimes it's like we're trying to cover a 6-foot body with a 3-foot blanket. And maybe the best thing to do is to just just learn to warm your own body. So warming your own heart rather than warming it through getting things right, rather than warming your heart through doing the really great job, because actually you find it probably doesn't warm your heart very much when you get all the things right. You've probably stressed yourself and you're worrying about how it could be better than it was, and a minor mistake that you did make, and the way that didn't quite work out, and how to plan for the next thing, and how to plan for tomorrow, where you'll do better. Probably going like that, because that's the shape your citta has taken. When it's in that shape, in that becoming obligation state, it then projects that into the next scenario. So we see our lives going along a track of one obligation to the next, in which we never quite succeeded. We're supporting an ongoing failure. Yeah, I was great as a manager when meditation's falling apart. Yeah, I was a good brother or sister. I supported them, but I was basically, my precepts were going very rocky at the end of the day because I had to go and have a drink with them or something to keep them company. So, where did the obligation come from? I mustn't let them down. I mustn't let them down. Obligation fatigue. I mustn't let other people down. You contemplate that? That energy, that feeling, that's a sankhara, formative process. Who's letting who down? The other person isn't getting what they want, maybe. Maybe, we don't even know that. And are you capable of fulfilling what they want? Is that your is that your destiny? You will be able to fulfill other people's needs. Is that what you set up? You have promised, I hereby vow I will fulfill your desires constantly. I will be able to do everything you expect of me constantly. Is that what you've signed up for? And is that a skillful relationship where you don't start feeling pressurized and why does she always want me to do this and I've got so much work to do to keep up with her? Or is it just, this is, I stand on my stability, I open, bring forth goodwill, and we'll see what happens. That's great. The benchmark is right here rather than out there. You are in control of it. And the benchmark is not a fixed thing. It's based upon stability, openness, allowing energy to move. Remember a friend of mine, and she was looking after her aged father. She's very concerned for her aging father who was in decline, and she was trying to make sure the medication was right. and maybe getting the medications correct and everything, the right times, the right place, get it all correct. And then she wasn't certain whether she'd actually made every medication exactly right, or in any way, the father, as they do, passed away. And so she had this thought, I don't know, maybe I could have done better. I mean, I was his daughter, I was his caregiver. I could have done better. Maybe I could have been there more often, like all day long. Maybe I could have been there all the time to make sure he was okay. And he passed away, And she was sitting, feeling like this, and she was thinking about her father. And then she heard her father's voice in her head saying, "Jill, I don't expect you to be perfect, I don't expect you to be perfect." Isn't that such a wonderful voice to hear? Who expects you to be perfect? You do. Who can't tolerate mistakes, the forgetting things? You. This is ill will. And we will run a long way to avoid that feeling of ill will, let people down, not good enough. Without, to the point where we actually get so intense trying to get it all right that we do start to make mistakes and get clumsy and lose our temper and feel exhausted. So this, you've got to keep reviewing that in your life. What happens if it all goes wrong? What happens if it all goes wrong? How bad is it? Because it does. Sometimes you're driving somewhere, you really want to get there by 11 o'clock and then get a flat tire. Or there's a traffic jam, or any one of a number of other things. And the imagination is, oh, everybody's going to be angry, annoyed, confused, disappointed, let down, things aren't going to work because I couldn't get there on time. You turn up half an hour late and say, oh yeah, flat tire. Oh, really? That's tough. You get an expression of sympathy and compassion rather than anger and irritation. Oh yeah, you didn't get here, but never mind. Janice stood in for you instead. No problem. You spent that time. Or I don't want to put, the other one is I don't want to, I've got an engagement. Don't want to impose upon you. I don't want to take your time. This is another form of ill will. And see, that's why this cultivation of goodwill is to go very deep into exploring some of these places where you feel constricted, pressurized. Admittedly, the workaday world may not have a lot of goodwill in it, but you never know. You never know. But the important thing is that you don't bring the ill will into your own system, particularly when the work model becomes also the way you model your meditation, your personal relationships. Are you good enough for this person? Are you doing enough for this person? He's upset, therefore it's your fault. That shouldn't happen. Your kids are a bit crazy, it's your fault. In that sense, the blaming, and so much of it coming back on oneself. Returning to that reflectively. What is my certainty here? What is the certainty that I can possibly commit to? I will maintain a stability that is open. I'm not saying, I'm going to close everything down, so nobody need bother me. I don't have to do anything. I'm completely isolated, rock solid, on my own. No, that's not responsible. That's not where we're at. That's not the nature of this realm. I'm open to whatever anybody wants, any time of day. Doesn't matter to me. You can be grumpy as hell. I don't mind. I'm open to all that. No, that's not right. You're stable and you're open, letting your awareness open with a gesture of goodwill, sense of non-ill will. Let's look at it like that. Non-mistrust, non-ill will. It's open, it's quite gentle quality. Somebody's unhappy, reverse experience is one end of compassion. Doesn't mean you're going to make them happy, but you receive that compassion. And then from there, maybe it's something you can do. Or maybe just being present in a compassionate mode is the remedy. And the other person receives your presence, your listening, your openness, your non-reaction, your non-judgment. Oh, thanks so much just for hearing that. I didn't do anything. You did. You maintained stability and openness. And that other person's citta could pick up that sign. It's surprising that, you think that, reading other people's minds is such a remote possibility. I don't think it is. I mean, you can't read their thoughts necessarily, but you can pick up their moods, or you can pick up what's happening, and you pick up the presence of somebody who's stable and open. And it helps. This is our gift to each other. And so, okay, this is a situation, it looks a bit crazy. I don't know what we're going to do about this. We'll just see how we can do it and what comes out of it. Do the best, what energies we're capable of. So then you're kind of active, but you haven't got this busyness. Busyness is a pressurized sense. Activity, Dhamma activity is a light playing with the potentials, teasing them out, seeing which way they're going to go. Recognize it can be a much of it's going to be a mistake, because that's the way you learn. No, try that. Nope, not that one. Okay, how about it? Yeah, that's about it. Whoops, no. That's the norm. So it's the negotiation with what's going on. If you get those skills in your daily life, then that's more or less what you do when you meditate. The two then integrate. You don't find exactly the right system. You don't find, the system's going to work for you constantly every day. But you do perhaps find enough savvy and know-how to say, well, yeah, that may be what happens for him or her. Great for them. Maybe they get into this lovely, refined meditation states or feeling joy and happiness. I'm just going to come into presence, work with attention, obligation, self-referencing. I am this, I should be that. I'm not as good as, I could be that, I ought to be that by now. Just work with the self-referencing. And using just the system of your body's telling you whether you're getting tense or uptight or drifting off. And then you can do a lot of really useful stuff just staying in that place where you're undoing the self-referencing and understanding it. Because then when you understand it, yeah, that feeling of, come on, no, you're not as, come on, let's get it going. You understand it, then you can, you see the sign of it, and you can recognize when it's occurring in your daily life. The same thing, there it is again. And as you begin to see through it in meditation, you begin to unplug it in your daily life. And it's really beautiful. On occasion, I know this rather remote session we're having, I remember doing a group meditation one time. I just get people to sort of sit together in twos and threes, and each individual was recognizing, what do you really want? I want to find my own stable presence. Okay. Now, when you see the other person, would you like that for them? Yeah. I'd like them to find their own stable, open presence. Do you want anything more? Nope. Okay. Now, when you sit together, just imagine the other person says, whatever you want to be, that's fine. I want you to be your own stable presence, what works for you. Just giving each other permission to not be obliged to come up with something cheerful, helpful, to not help me, to not, not be nice to me, to not look good for me. I don't want anything out of you. Yeah. Cut the debt for each other. And we suddenly find real human beings and all their stable presence, but the outward manifestations can be whatever they are. Changeable. We're not uniform. We're not all cut out perfect creatures. We're all particular shapes and patterns and mannerisms. That's fine. I'm not bothered with that. I'm not interested in it. I'm not fascinated by it. I'm not disappointed in it. It's just, that's how it happens. Giving each other permission for that stable presence. And this is the beauty of group meditations. So something I would very much encourage when this particular session ends, whenever it's possible. This is kind of what retreat centers are for, or, little gatherings. Just the support of Kalyanamitta, spiritual friendship, of people who just want to offer each other and recommend the gift of presence and let the rest of it move and shift as it will. If we do that for each other, we've begun to unplug one of the most fundamental triggers for our sense of obligation and even misunderstood ill will. I expect you to be something for me. That's ill will. That's the source of ill will. Because then you will criticize yourself, strain yourself, repress yourself. I don't want that. You will commit acts of ill will towards yourself if you follow that message that you have to be something for me. I don't want that. I don't want to support it. And the freeing up, you might find surprising that your meditation acquires a kind of stillness and strength because you've returned back, you've taken your heart back from the confused strategies of obligation and criticism. So let's take some time for direct practice. Mm. So it's our last day together. So kind of, it's always up to you, really. But I would suggest that you might want to stretch, and perhaps then we'll sit till about 10:30 local time. Contemplating these currents in the heart, the expectations of work and the daily round and what that brings up. So we're coming to that phase where encouragement to, in your own time, opening the sense doors, of which most potent, of course, is the mind door. The thoughts and the memories and those navigation signals that we operate under. A chance to, reflect on those. As to what's next, and how was that, what it could be, what it should be, and opening around it. Beauty of stable openness is that it remedies things by itself. We see things with a sense of dispassion, and that is tremendously helpful to release some compulsive mind states. So I'll take leave to let you explore your own space privately, and we can meet again in 3 hours' time.